If you were a leper in the time of Jesus, you were forced to live in isolation. And this is because in the first century, they thought leprosy was contagious. And therefore, in order to prevent the spread of this dreaded disease, the leper would be, you could say, quarantined. He had to live, as we heard in the first reading, apart. He had to live outside the camp, alone, away from the community. Well, not only was he sick, but leprosy also made you impure. Impure in the sense of unfit for religious worship. You could not come to the temple. You could not be in the presence of the Lord in the temple. You couldn't worship with the people of God because you were unfit for worship. And this condition of religious impurity could be passed on to other people that you came in contact with. You could defile them, contaminate them, just with your presence. If they touched you or you touched them, then they too went away, unfit for worship. And so the leper's doomed to live alone, outside the boundaries of the community. And so it's with that in mind that you notice an interesting exchange occurs at the end of today's gospel. Because the leper has stepped inside the community, but Jesus has stepped outside of community life. Jesus is forced to live outside community life. And you could say that Jesus and the leper have traded places. Now, it's a small detail, isn't it, in the story? And yet the evangelist feels compelled to include that small detail in today's narrative. I think he includes it because he saw in it such symbolic significance that explains what Jesus was about. Jesus and the leper have traded places. And in this, the evangelist sees a foreshadowing of the Lord's passion, a foreshadowing of the Lord's cross, in which Jesus Christ, the one truly innocent person who's ever walked the face of the earth, is condemned, though he's innocent, in order that all of the guilty ones in the world, those who are unmistakably guilty, might be acquitted of their sins and go free. Jesus takes our place. You see, on the cross, Jesus is impaled. That's what happens when you're nailed in your hands and in your feet. You're impaled in an inescapable and helpless position. You could say he is held captive upon the cross in order that all of those who are captive to sin captive to habitual sins, captive to addictions, to fear, to guilt, to shame, to habits that they cannot escape from. Jesus on the cross suffers our captivity in order to release the captives, that's us, from our captivity. You see, on the cross, he trades places with us. He suffers our captivity that all of us captives might walk away free. I think how timely it is that here, with the beginning of Lent, the holy season just a few days away, that the church gives us this gospel. The one who came to take upon himself our captivity will be walking and living among us over the 40 days of Lent. He comes to take our place. He comes to set captives free. And so, my friends, as we enter the holy season, Jesus is inviting us to consider where it is that we are held captive. What addictions have ensnared us and hold us fast? Is it sin? Patterns of sin and habits of sin that we don't seem to be able to break? Is it wounds from the past that still ooze pain? You see, my friends, he came to suffer our captivity. And he's inviting us to trade our sorrow, to trade our shame, to trade our fear for freedom. In the holy season of Lent, Jesus wants freedom for his people. For some, I think this will mean a visit to the confessional which you have not visited in years. Freedom awaits you there, because on the cross, Jesus suffered your captivity. And he's just waiting to trade your bondage for the freedom he suffered to provide for you. On March 17th, the Saturday, I think it's the 4th week of Lent, the Unbound Conference will take place all day here in the parish. And you'll recall that Unbound is a way of praying to bring the people of God who are held captive in various areas of their lives to freedom. Jesus comes to take our place. He trades places with us. The captivity he suffered on the cross in order to give us freedom. I would say save the date, March 17th. Come and receive unbound prayer and learn the keys that make for freedom. And for all of us, I encourage you to come into the holy season asking the Lord for the gift of faith, that the Lord would deepen and renew the faith of all of his people in what Jesus came to accomplish in our lives. He came to trade places. His innocence he gives us in exchange for our guilt. His compassion he gives us in exchange for our pain. His freedom he gives us in exchange for every place in our lives where we're captive. Ask the Lord Jesus, deepen my faith in the mystery of what you came to do, and lead me and all of my brothers and sisters to freedom.